I think so too. And I think like listening to you talk, like I started like reflecting like a little bit on my past or like things that have helped me.
Hmm.
And I think like the biggest thing that like helped me is I was like, and you know this, like I was in an abusive relationship and it was really bad. And like I feel like a lot of people don't really know that about me. But I ended up having to move out of state to kind of get away from that situation. And I think one of the things, like, and I know it sounds super cheesy, but I kind of felt like, and before him, like, I did have other relationships that I felt were good or that, like, I got something good out of. But I think that that relationship was really, it, not even it being like, oh, this same situation keeps happening to me. It wasn't really that. It was just like, this was like so like hard on me and heavy that I was like, I don't see myself like being able to get past it, or I don't see myself like, this is all I know right now. So I can't see what's like out there, like, because that's all I can expect. And so I guess like an advice would be kind of to like, just, you don't need to know all the answers to like how to get what you want, but just know that like somehow it's going to work out and like somehow you're going to have whatever you want, and just focus on what you want. And you don't need to think about like the steps, because I think sometimes people get in their head and they're like, well, like I'm in this bad relationship, like I obviously deserve this, like how am I going to be with somebody that's better, like,
Hmm.
you know, I'm so used to this. And so I feel like you have to kind of step out from that and like not think about the measures that you need to take. Just like, hey, A to B. Like B is where I want to be, and I'm just going to like visualize myself getting there. Like I don't know how, I don't know when, but I think it's going to happen. And like putting that energy in that is what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes taking massive action is a good first step?
Massive action, like in like kind of like leaving, like how I did. Is that what you're kind of, yeah.
Like, you never want to just run away from a situation, right?
Right.
And I don't think that you did that, by the way.
Yeah.
But do you think it's helpful for someone that's in a similar situation? When I say massive action, sometimes you got to do something big so you can get out of it, so you can come back and do all the small stuff. Is that something you would recommend as someone who did that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, sometimes when you're in a situation like that, and like, I'm a very sensitive person, like, anybody that knows me, like, I feel things, like, for people, like, if
Hmm.
somebody's sad about something, I can usually, like, feel it, or like, if somebody, you know, tells me something that's like heavy for them, like I can feel that heaviness. Like, and so I feel like in that situation for me, and I think everybody's different, but for me, I was just so caught up in that situation that like it took me like literally physically being away from it to realize like, oh, this is who I am. Like, because like it just felt like me and that person were just like all intertwined and like mixed together, that like I couldn't really identify like what my needs were. And
Hmm.
I couldn't really understand like what I needed to do for me because I was too like involved. So like I think if that person or a person is in that situation, I think just assessing where they're at, because there was many times that like I tried moving, or like I tried changing my phone number, like I tried staying here, but like it just didn't work, you
Yeah.
know? And so like to me, like it took that.
I feel like it would be the same way for a lot of people. But
Yeah.
I think the reason why I'm asking this is I don't think people know to do that, right? First of all, let me say a few things, right? Is it okay with you?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty brave that you're even talking about it, and I think that people that are listening to you talk about it are going to want to know like what you mean by it. And that's the only reason why I ask you if that's what you mean. And that's the reason why I'm bringing it up is I don't think people know that. And as someone with a mom who was in an abusive relationship, I don't think anyone told her. She could have used a lore in her life to be like, hey, this is how it gets done. I think people feel weak when they do that because there's the term running away, right? And I'll clarify some of it. And I'll let you touch on most of it. But you moved away. This isn't how you got out of it, because you came right back into it and you had to do some stronger stuff to get out, right? But there was that period that you just talked about where you had to literally move away to get a clear mind, to figure out how to come back and deal with it. And some people, I think, might think, if the people that are in it, right? might think that that's a weak move, like running away, right? And so I think it's not. Would you agree that the strongest thing you can do is get out so you can think straight, figure things out, and then deal with it, right? That's also just as brave as sticking around and dealing with it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think at the time, like, if I'm completely honest, like when I left, I still was like talking to him on the phone.
Yeah.
And I still had, like, I knew, because I think I always had a very good intuition. I knew that, like, we weren't going to end up together. I knew that, like, it was going to end. I didn't know how. I didn't know, like, in what means. Like, did that mean that, like, it was going to end for me, like, my life? You know, like, I kind of wasn't sure. But I just knew that, like, it wasn't going to continue. Like, I couldn't picture myself living my life with him until I was, like, 80 or something. Like, I didn't foresee that happening. So when I went, I kind of had, like, the idea of, like, I'll still talk to him and see how I feel when I'm there. And then when I was there, I was just like, I found out something that, like, I needed to find out, I guess. Like, and that was, like, he wasn't being faithful and stuff. And it was like,
So you didn't know that while you were here?
that he wasn't being faithful. I knew that, like, because we had, like, a relationship where we'd always break up and get back together, and it was just, like, on and off. I'd change my number, he'd find me, like, it was just, like, a yo-yo. And then there were times that, like, I feel like he probably cheated, but I never had proof.
Yeah.
But this time when I was in Montana, like, I had proof. And so, like, when I found out, I was like, oh my God, this is my ticket out. Because, like,
So you felt kind of happy?
I was so happy. Like, I was like, yes. Like,
I'm glad you're talking about this, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't think that, but I saw you smile a little bit.
Yeah, I was
so
like-
you feel relieved? Like, finally, like, I have my reason.
Yeah. Like, because I think with him, like, he knew how empathetic I was and caring, and his mom had just, like, passed away from cancer. And so, like, he was always, like, he'd always reel me in by, like, but you're, like, the only, like, thing that's good in my life. And, like, I'd be like, yeah, you're kind of right, you know. Like, I would kind of think that.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
No, like, I would be like, yeah, you know. And, like, I always had this, like, I always wanted things to be better for him. And I always wanted to, like, be able to help him in that way. But I also felt like he was weighing me down.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to, like, move on and just, like, let him struggle. I think that was hard for me. But then whenever he did something like that and I had proof, then it was just like, okay, like, you chose this. So, like, and I just was like, I remember, like, he owed me, like, quite a bit of money. And I was just like, hey, you're going to pay me back? And he was like, nope. And I was like, okay, bye. And, like, that was, like,
Well, even more reason.
yeah, like, I was just like, okay. And then, like, days after that, he'd, like, call and call and call. And, like, you know, I moved back and he would stalk me. And, like, yeah, it was pretty bad. But, like, I just continued to just, like, move forward. Like, when looking back, like, I think that I cared about him, but I think that I was, like, really, what's the word? Like, when manipulated. I was really manipulated.
Yeah. Like, he knew you cared about him, so he used that to gain position in your guys' relationship.
Yeah, like, he knew that he knew that I cared where he ended up. And he knew that he wasn't ending up in the right direction. And so he knew that he could use that, like, to reel me back in to help him.
Yeah. That's part of the things that I talk about when I say, like, the power that men have.
Yeah.
And me and you have talked about this in the past. I don't ever mean that as men are more powerful than women. That's not true. Holistically, you know what I mean? There's tons of things that go into what makes a person powerful. We're all powerful. But as men, we have a certain responsibility with our power that I think that you need to use it the right way. And it's up to other men to hold each other accountable and say, hey, like, you're not allowed to use it like that. There's responsible ways to use this power. Women have it too. And women have power over certain things. And sometimes women abuse it, right? It's just not popular to report that if you're a guy. But it happens. There's plenty of guys that are in, like, relationships that are emotionally abusive, financially abusive. There's tons of things, right? Yeah. And so I think it's important that people understand that. And I'm really proud of you for talking about those things too. I really do think so, because I think that that people need to understand that it looks different for different people, right? It looks different. Do you consider yourself a domestic violence survivor? Or
Yeah, I definitely do. I think for a long time I struggled with that title because I felt like I never like ended up in the hospital or like it
did you
never.
compare yourself to other people in similar situations?
Yeah, like you always hear those stories like and in this particular situation like which wasn't very smart of me, but like his ex prior to that he did hospitalized. And
Yeah.
so I always felt like I didn't have it as bad as she did. You know what I mean? Like and so like I can't really complain about it. You know, and so I think that it was like a hard I don't want to say title, but like it just something it was hard for me to like resonate with, I guess, because of that, because I felt like other people have had it harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. I feel a similar way about like, because I was abused as a child, right? It's how I ended up in the system.
Yeah.
But I think I did a similar thing that you're talking about, which is like, there was a time where I felt like a victim, but what I understand is it looks different for different people. And like my childhood is pretty bad and there's tons of bad things, but I've also met people that have gone through maybe less bad things in terms of severity, but they were also abused. Like I've met people that didn't go to foster care. So when they talk to me, they're like, "Oh, well, mine was never that bad."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, it was, dude. You just like you just grew up with those fucked up parents." You know what I mean? Like, but it still hurts. Like it's still like similar. It looks different, but you're allowed. It's the same thing with like recovery. Like, you know what I mean? And I've talked about this in the podcast in the past. Like, I struggle with that too because I refer to myself as someone that's in recovery, but I'm not in recovery the way that someone who's been to a 12-step program. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like I do drink and I do things. You know what I mean? And so it's like I don't want to disrespect the people that don't, but I understand that I have a history of going to rehab. I have a history of these things. Like, I mean, I have a history of being suicidal. I have a history of suicide attempts. And I need to honor those feelings and understand that that's the way it looks for me. And I see things differently, but also still honor those people. The way that you honor the way that you have been and the things that you've been through, but you can also honor and understand someone that's been through more than you, and the same exact respect and responsibility and compassion for someone that's been through less than you, because it still hurts, right?
Yeah.
Like it's still a lot to go through.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's important that you speak about things like that, because I think people need to know. I think people already admire you, but I also think that when people hear things like that, they're going to go, "What?" If I had to guess, they're going to go, "What?"
Yeah.
Like, Laura, that girl was like laughing at my party like 3 weeks ago. Like, I know that girl. Like, but it feels comfortable. Like, it feels good to know that people feel similar things. You know what I mean? Hey guys, if you enjoyed that clip, click on this link right over here to subscribe to this clip's channel. Or if you want to view the entire conversation, go ahead and click on this link over here to view the entire podcast. Bet you on the next one, guys.